Okay, it's draft season, and while there's plenty of prospects to talk about, often quarterbacks are the most exciting ones to talk about. I have some hot takes on this list, some ones that I think people will disagree with, but ultimately, it's not the best quarterback class. I do ultimately have three quarterbacks with a first round grade, although only one that I would put in the top half of the first round. But yeah, ultimately, let's get into this class. There is a lot of intrigue to talk about, so let's just get into it. Number 10, a few of these ones lower down we won't spend forever on, but Curtis Rourke, the Indiana quarterback, is, really big quarterback, has nice size at 6'5", which I think that people will definitely look for. He is a usually accurate quarterback, but one thing, despite his, big size, is he doesn't have the biggest arm that you might think for someone of his size, and quite frankly, I just don't think he throws well enough under pressure in the NFL. That is an important aspect. Also an older prospect at 24, so ultimately interesting enough to potentially take a look at. Again, if you're looking for a guy who could, in the right situation, succeed, he might be that guy, but I couldn't put him too much higher than that. Number 9, I have Tyler Shough, which this is apparently my hottest take of the draft. You can check out on the podcast, my podcast co-host Kyle, big fan of Tyler Shough. He has him as quarterback 4, so we got into some disagreements there. But yeah, I'm just not as into Tyler Shough as I think other people are. I will say, he seems to be one of the more controversial prospects. He's currently 7th on the consensus big board among quarterbacks, so I'm not that much lower than him there. But like I said, there are people who really like him, including one I have a podcast with. So what's the deal? What are the positives with Tyler Shough? He runs an offense really well, and he does have an NFL arm. I'm not sure if I would call it an elite arm, but he definitely has that NFL arm, and there are some times when I think he shows off good athleticism. I think that like the straight line speed of just like designed runs, things like that, are very good, and I get why people like him. Ultimately, the reason why I can't really buy into him too much, other than like a potential Brock Purdy, someone worth taking a flyer on day 3, is kind of where I have him, is because I just feel like he needs to be in a great situation to succeed. When a play breaks down, quite frankly, I thought he did a very poor job, which he didn't have a ton of in college. I thought that there were a lot of times when he did a very good job at, again, running the offense as designed. But when plays did break down, quite frankly, he reminded me a bit of Will Levis in a lot of these situations. Some brain-dead throws that he would make. The other biggest concern for me is he was a one-year wonder when he was 24. And there's reason for it, right? It's not like he just like couldn't figure it out and then all of a sudden figured it out in 24. I get it. There was a different pathway for him being there. But ultimately, like, the concern there is that when you have that much time to grow and get better as a player, like, it's a real thing where guys who have their breakout year in their mid-20s tend to not be as good in the NFL. I think Kenny Pickett is a great example of this. Took him a while to get going, finally has a great year right before he gets drafted, but then once he gets drafted, just isn't quite the same. Now, again, Bo Nix was kind of this way, and then he was good in the NFL. So in the right situation, he can work, but he's just very situation dependent. You could talk me into him being higher than 9, but that's why I currently only have him at 9. Number 8, I have Dillon Gabriel, who is a fun quarterback, someone who can make throws down the field, can make throws under pressure. To me, I see him as kind of a best case scenario for him is a Gardner Minshew type, right? I see him who maybe, even if he doesn't get into the best situation, has a chance to survive early on because he is mobile enough and he can make throws under pressure. Also an older prospect, that is a thing, and he is not as good at just the traditional running an offense stuff as Shough is. He will take too long to get off his first read. I also don't love his footwork, and he will miss throws. So ultimately, not a prospect I love either, but someone I could see, being around for a while, because I think that he could maybe translate to the next level a little bit easier. Next up, we have Quinn Ewers, who is, so again, I think that, like, if you're someone who likes Shough, you probably hate Ewers, and if you like Ewers, you probably hate Shough, because they're very different prospects, kind of two ends of the spectrum, whereas, I feel like Shough is a very kind of polished guy, but what's his ceiling? Ewers is the opposite. He has really good arm talent, although I will say, his deep ball goes to the moon and back. It's a very high deep ball, puts a lot of air under it, but he does have good arm talent. He does move well. he can throw on the run, and he's just 21 years old. So that's the good side of him. The issue is he's just the definition of a project, and he has, footwork that, a podcast host, Kyle, compared him to Drew Lock. And to me, okay, listen, if you have bad footwork, how much does it affect you? It will affect him. He'll have throws that just go, way off, and also he makes some really bad decisions as well. So he is someone who is not as good of a player, quite frankly, as the last two guys I mentioned, but he's 3 or 4 years younger than those guys. So the thing is, he has more time to grow and develop, and that's why ultimately I think I would take him over them in the right situation. Again, I think it depends on actually where you're at. I would put all these guys in the same tier, but what team you're at, of like, if you feel like you want to develop a young guy, maybe you're drafting a quarterback in round 1, and you say, okay, let's also draft a guy in round 6 that can be sort of our, when the Washington Redskins drafted Robert Griffin III, they also drafted Kirk Cousins in that same draft for the, hey, if we're developing one guy, why not have another guy in the room as a backup plan, and that actually worked out pretty well. That's probably how I would use Ewers, like Joe Milton with the Patriots last year, similar thing. Number 6, I'm going Will Howard out of Ohio State, a guy who I could see, again, I feel like with a lot of these guys we're seeing, could they beat a Brock Purdy type? He is another guy who I have in this same tier, though, of like maybe on day 3 in the right situation. The one thing I don't love about him compared to other players is like he does not have much creativity. Compared to Brock Purdy, like Brock Purdy was very creative with the football when a play broke down. Howard is not that. He throws to his first or second read every time, and he's good at it. He's a strong quarterback who can move well. He's successful on design runs. He can throw off balance. But you just have to wonder, is he almost a stereotype of an Ohio State quarterback prospect, right? Does well in a very easy situation, but once you get him a tough situation, we've seen quarterbacks who have had way more highs, like a Justin Fields, then struggle once they get to the NFL at kind of the tougher situation plays. Will Howard be one of those guys? Again, I liked him enough from what I saw on tape to feel somewhat confident about him, but not enough to feel too confident about him. Number 5, these are all still, so like, I still have all these guys in kind of that same tier of like, yeah, on day 3, maybe in the right situation. So it feels like the difference between 5 and 9, honestly, is not that large. But yeah, this is a bit of a hot take, I know, with Max Brosmer. But here's what I like about him. He is great over the middle. He sees the field really well. Only 6'2", but I guess 6'2" is tall enough. He sees that middle of the field really well. I do think that he has a really quick release, good zip over the middle. He's someone who can run. So again, if we're looking for a Brock Purdy type, he definitely has that, and I could see it. Here's just the issue, is he is a bit smaller. I feel like he feels smaller than 6'2", and he's just, quite frankly, just can't throw down the field. That's just not a thing that he has in his game. He's not a downfield passer. And at the NFL level, if they know you can't throw down the field, you're going to play a lot of single safety deep coverages. And can you succeed there? I just don't know. I think he's going to have to, quite frankly, figure something out with his downfield passing. I think like PFF grades, I forget what it was, but he was like actively bad down the field, and then like one of the best in the league in entire college football at over the middle intermediate passing. He's so good there. I'm interested in him, but you have to wonder if that area of of concern will ultimately sink him. But yeah, that's where I have those quarterbacks. Now let's get into the top 4, which I do think that regardless of how you feel about this, to me the top 4 should be the top 4. At number 4, I do have Jalen Milroe, and I have a second-round grade on Milroe. I like Milroe a decent amount. Milroe is a bit of a project. Maybe that's an underselling. Milroe is definitely a project. Let's talk about the positives, though. This guy is just an incredible athlete, right? He's electric with the ball in his hands. He also can make some great throws. Like, his best throws look awesome. I would also say, like, I do think that he can process plays quickly at times when plays are open. I think that's a real thing about him, and he's great at throwing the ball deep. I mean, it is what it is. He doesn't come off as pre-snap read very often. That's just kind of how he plays. I would say that, like, with most Alabama quarterbacks, they're kind of used to throwing to wide open players. I feel like Milroe can throw to a covered player. He knows how to do that. And in fact, sometimes for better or worse, he trusts his receivers. Ultimately, I made the Anthony Richardson comparison, but I think it's that kind of prospect of like someone who has the athleticism to be great if they can fix some of their issues. And essentially, the way I view quarterback prospects is there's no such thing as a great quarterback prospect. Every quarterback prospect is more likely than not to fail. That's just the stats of the position. First overall quarterbacks fail more than they succeed. So because of that, I'm more willing for this position to take a chance on a guy who, might have a smaller likelihood of succeeding if their ceiling is just that much higher. He is the definition of a low floor, high ceiling type of prospect. And honestly, those guys aren't the worst guys to have, because if they do flame out, they flame out right away, and you're okay with that. Again, there's other issues. He has smaller hands, which usually I don't care, but he also has high fumble numbers, so I care about the high fumble numbers. I'm assuming the small hands has something to do with it. He will sit in the pocket for too long if nothing is open, and he'll take some chances and he'll miss some throws. He's not a perfect prospect, but there's enough upside there for me to still be willing to spend a second-round pick on him. Number 3 is the most controversial prospect I've ever seen. Right? I've never seen a guy who some people are saying should be drafted second overall, and some people are saying should be drafted in the second round. Will Levis was close. There were people I didn't have a first-round grade on Will Levis, but there were people who had a top 5 pick grade on Will Levis. I guess that's probably the closest I can think of. Maybe if you have someone that you can think of in the comments below, let me know. Bo Nix a little bit, but Sanders is more dramatic than that. There are people who love Sanders. There are people like me who are cooler on him, although I would also say there are people that are much cooler on Sanders than I am as well. I still have a first-round grade on him, and I still think there are some real positives with Sanders. So I want to start there. Guy sees the field amazingly well. He's really accurate, and he can throw while getting hit. There's compilation videos of him just getting hammered as he's throwing the ball and still finding a way to get it to the guy he wants to get it to, which I like. He can throw on the run. I do think he moves pretty well, which is, we'll talk about the athleticism in a second, but I do think that he can move pretty well. And I think the biggest thing people like about Sanders is he kind of just checks off all the intangible boxes, right? Seems like a really good leader, seems like a really good locker room guy, comes from a situation where his dad played in the NFL for so long, so he knows what he's getting into. It seems like people that interview him really like him, and for the quarterback position, that does matter. Ultimately, so much of football is a quarterback getting a play, relaying it to everybody, and then making sure everyone understands what they're doing and making sure he understands what everyone else is doing. That's a huge part of the game, and being able to have a guy that you can just trust to do that really helps. So, yeah, there are things to like about Sanders. Ultimately, I just have some concerns, and I think how much you like his creativity is probably determining how you feel about him as a prospect. There are people who I've seen have him at quarterback 1, and a big reason is they love his creativity. I do not love his creativity. Just like I didn't love Justin Fields' creativity, Carson Wentz is another player that I've made the comparison with, of the kind of guy who doesn't let a play die. I think he does too much, and to be honest, in the NFL, it's just going to be more difficult. He also has really high sack numbers, and when you factor in the not willing to let a play die stuff, I just feel like that's going to create more damage than good. I prefer a quarterback who's willing to throw the ball away, and he's just not that right now. Something you can get better at, but it's a little concerning when you have to get better at something like that, because a lot of times guys don't get better at it. Everyone said, Jameis Winston, he just has to stop taking those chances and he'll be great. He never stopped. Carson Wentz, he just has to stop, taking those chances and he'll be great. And he stopped. And, Sanders doesn't take those chances down the field, but when a play isn't working, he still will try things like that, which is, the biggest concern. Now, again, it is something you can fix, but ultimately the other criticism is he just isn't a great athlete. He's not a horrible athlete. He's still someone you'd be willing to draft in a specific situation, but he's not this elite athlete. So you are kind of taking a project quarterback who also doesn't have the athleticism that, some players that we've even talked about before have. Well, I still like his positives enough to draft him in round 1. For me, it would only be sort of in the final 10 picks of round 1 instead of earlier than that. Although this is a weaker draft, so if you want to reach on him a bit, hey, it's a quarterback. No such thing as reaching on quarterback if they work out. So yeah, those are my Shitter Sanders takes. I've talked more about him on the podcast. Check that out if you want to. Number 2, I do have Jackson Dart ahead of Shedeur Sanders. A couple years younger, at just 21 years old. A lot of things I like about Jackson Dart. I still would say in a typical draft, I'd kind of have him in that Kenny Pickett spot of around 20th overall. But yeah, let's talk about what I like about him. He's very accurate and he can throw on time. Those are important qualities to have, and he has those qualities. While he is still young, he has multiple years of being good at Ole Miss. He has that baseball type of playing style. Like, I'm not comparing him to Patrick Mahomes, but you know how Mahomes has those plays where it's like, oh yeah, he used to play baseball. Jackson Dart has that. And again, he played third base, to be clear, which I feel like that's the position you want out of your quarterback, because you can throw off balance, and he's really good at that. Really good at throwing accurately on the run and even in awkward angles, which I really like. He is someone who can admit a play is dead. He can. He can throw a ball away when it's not working, and that's something that I really value. Damage management is probably the most overlooked trait when it comes to evaluating quarterback prospects, and he does a very good job at managing when plays do not work out. Here are the questions with Dart. Well, first, let's just get into, there's some concerns, right? He had some pocket presence issues. I think they're a bit overblown, but they still exist. They're still real. There's concerns about his upside. Well, he is, I would say, a much better athlete than, or at least a step up from Shedeur Sanders. He's not Cam Ward, who we'll talk about in a second when it comes to athleticism. He's just not. I also kind of feel like he has that thing where he sometimes feels more comfortable throwing when moving as opposed to standing still. Maybe it's that baseball background in a negative way. And again, his arm is good. It's an NFL arm. It's not an elite arm. He's not Josh Allen out here. He just isn't. So those are the concerns. I think a lot of upside concerns. And then there's just the question, which is a high percentage of his plays were schemed up. You could argue he is just a system quarterback. That could be something that is argued. People have made that argument. Here's why I'm still willing to take a chance on him is there were still a good chunk of plays where they weren't schemed up plays, or when he had to be clever with how he was going to make a throw work and was able to do it. When plays broke down, he was still very good. And that's why I'm still a fan of Jackson Dart. So personally, I would draft Dart over Sanders, but I have them kind of in that same tier of late first round, but I would draft them before the second. And finally, number 1 on my list. He's probably number 1 on your list too. He's number 1 on most of our list, although some people disagree. There are still some Sanders at 1 people, but most people have Cam Ward at number 1, and we should have him at number 1, in my opinion. There's kind of this idea of, I think people are saying there isn't a great quarterback in this draft. I've heard people say that he would be quarterback 7 in last year's draft. I could not disagree more. In fact, I compared my grade on him to my grade on players last year. Cam Ward would be my second quarterback taken last year behind Caleb Williams, who I was a big fan of, and we'll see if that works out. But I really like Cam Ward a lot as a player. He has great arm strength. He can throw in different arm angles. He can throw off balance. He's really accurate, obviously really athletic as well. I like that he isn't afraid to not make a throw sometimes. He'll wait, but he'll still wait until it gets open and then make the throw. Honestly, that's the thing I like about him, is he just gets the game of football. He knows when to throw the ball, where to throw the ball, how to throw the ball sometimes, with back shoulders and things of that nature. He has really good timing. I think that, to me, I really value a smart quarterback, and he definitely is that. My podcast co-host compared him to Kyler Murray, and there definitely is some of that there, where it seems like he, gets outside the pocket and waits, has these incredibly long plays. He keeps his eyes downfield when he is scrambling, and he'll take chances, right? And that's just kind of the concern, is do you have more of a Mahomes or do you have more of a Zach Wilson type of a guy who will move out, make guys miss, and make the throw down the field? Well, I don't think he does it quite as much as either of those two players did, and he certainly doesn't rely on it the way maybe a Zach Wilson did in college. It's definitely a big part of his game, and there is that question of will it work? If I am drafting Cam Ward, I'm making sure I get a good jump ball receiver, which it's probably going to be the Titans who have him. Calvin Ridley's all right. Maybe not the perfect fit for that, but they at least have receivers who can make things work. There are some issues. The issues are when he has less time in the NFL, how will he adjust? Again, I talked about he takes chances and he holds on to the ball for a while. It usually worked out in college. Will there be a Caleb Williams level adjustment? We'll see. Also can struggle when he's under pressure. So not a perfect prospect by any means, but there's enough upside there. I'm a big fan of Cam Ward, and I think he's underrated. So yeah, ultimately, those are my top 10 quarterbacks. I'm sure you agree with every pick I said and have no disagreements, but if for some reason you do, feel free to let me know in the comments below. I appreciate all comments, negative or positive. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts were of this list in the comments below. Maybe put your list in there. I'd be interested in hearing what you think. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.